So we've seen how overview in detail is a really powerful pattern for visualization in general. So being able to see the overall pattern of a data set, and then being able to dive in and see more details on demand. So details on demand really allows a user to explore data and then drill down and find insights. So one thing that so we can go ahead and implement this. So I want to go ahead and link two plots together, where here we'll start with the log scatter plot, where rank frequency plot of the most active users in the noise channel in MIDS Slack. And we'll go ahead and for each user here, we can see we've got the most active and the second and third most active users. We'll go ahead and look back to a plot that we made before, which is the heat map plot. So the heat map plot is this one, and here we're showing the times of day and of week that users make the most posts. So here we've gone and broke the data down by day going down and by week going across. Of course, this could use some axes labels here, and some tick marks. And we'll go ahead and connect this so that we can see. We can see for each user on this. If we go ahead and hover, we'll add a hover interaction. So if we can look at a user, we can see the activity patterns of the most popular users. So the first thing we're going to do is we have this code here to make the heat map, and if we want to connect it to the other plot, it's going to help to have this as a modular piece of code. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and fork this, and we'll call it the heat map modular, right? So what we're going to do is take the code pattern from the other chart here, right? And we'll go ahead and add a heat map function. So if we go ahead and we take an object that is my VisLib, and we add heat map as a function. Here we go. We've done it. Right, so now we have heat map as a function. Here, heat map went and got the data itself, right? But instead, we actually want the heat map to go ahead and work with the data already. So I'm going to go ahead and do is actually remove. Let's go ahead and comment out this piece of code, right? And what I'm going to do is go ahead and add this as a plot function. So I'm going to create a variable plot, which is going to be the function for actually doing the plotting stuff here. And that's going to be kind of the core of our function here, and we can actually leave this because this was for the callback. There's probably not a reference for that. So okay, so now we've added a plot function, and we also need ways to set data and other things too. So let's see, we can indent that. There we go, and all this stuff just gets set right away. So let's look at that. There we go. This is not going to work right now, right? But what we could do to make sure that our code is working is we can go ahead and outside here, we'll go ahead and actually call the data, right? Run the timestamps command, where here, this is just doing that. So we still need to close out d3.json. And then what we can do is create a new plot from my VisLib and go ahead and call that. So we'll pass the data in. So we'll do this. We'll make a heat map. Right. So we'll go ahead and call that. And then what we'll do is we'll do a heat map dot data of timestamps and heat map dot plot. Right. So we have a plot function. We need a way to set the data. So here we'll go ahead and just declare our variable data to be an empty list. Right, and we'll write a data function. Since we already have a data function over here, we can just go ahead and really copy that. We're going to have basically the same way to load in data, and similarly, we're going to have the same way to actually export the plot object. So if we go ahead over here to our module here, we can go ahead and return the public variable in the same way. So at the end here, end of plot. Right, we'll declare public. Right now we just have plot and data. Here we want plot to have the underscore to match up. And this should go ahead and have turned that into a module pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and save that and make sure it works. So this one, if you'll remember, it takes a little while to actually run. Let's see if we ran into an error here. Okay, timestamps is not defined. So where did we use timestamps? We passed in timestamps here. So instead of timestamps, we actually wanted to use variable data. I think it's actually just going to be easier to call this timestamps. Yep, and we'll just set timestamps. There we go. You might be able to hear my coonhound in the background, so excuse her. Something exciting outside. And so now that we have this heat map function, what we can do is we can go ahead and take our whole heat map function, and we can go ahead and copy that over into our other viz, where we had our rank frequency plot function. And we'll go ahead and add our heat map function, where we need to pass in the timestamps variable. So here we loaded the data, right? And we needed timestamps. So I'm gonna, in the same way, go ahead and generate the timestamps data on the callback here. So we did users, we did timestamps, but we want to do the data callback on the on individual users, right? So here we map d.user, right? And so what we're going to want is the timestamps for each user. So we can declare a new variable. So let's call this user timestamps, and that can just be an empty objects for us. Right, and here we're going to want to set user timestamps. We're going to want to actually loop through the whole data. Here this returned, this is all timestamps, but instead we're going to want to add a list of timestamps for each user. So we can go ahead and loop through. So let's go loop through data. So do our standard loop, I equals 0, I less than timestamps. Here, in this case, data.length. And we'll go ahead and add to user timestamps. So let's say if data of I.user. This is a little bit of a data manipulation here. Data of I and user is in our user timestamps object. Then we'll be able to go ahead and from here just add to them. So we'll say user timestamps dot user. We're going to go ahead and push the data of I dot timestamp, right? And here we actually wanted to moment that, so I wanted to run the moment on that. So we'll go ahead and do that. Data of I dot timestamp. Where push is just extending the array, and else we're going to do something pretty similar. We're just going to say user timestamps of user. It's just going to be a single list element with this. So we are going to go ahead and we've created a list for each user. So there we go for that. And because we want to go ahead and look at this, right, we'll just go ahead and look at our user timestamps object to see what got created. And let's see what we got. Looks like our object got plotted here, and let's look at what we got for user timestamps. Oh boy, a lot of stuff is logged here. This looks like the main data itself. So let's go ahead and just make sure that we know what we're looking at here. Save it, run it. Here we go. So here's our user timestamps. User timestamps dot user. All right, we can see what we did wrong here. We'll just go ahead and use the correct accessor method. Here we set the user attribute right? But instead we want a data of I.user. Right, so we're going to need to use that. Here we go, and it looks like we've done it. So thanks for sticking with me there. Right, and we have these moment objects for each list of them for each user, and we've cheated a little bit. We've made this we didn't make it a global, but we can, and so we'll be able to see this from anywhere in the plot. And what we're going to go ahead and do is go ahead and set the callback here to be. We're going to go ahead and call the make a new object, which is going to be our heat map. Right, we'll call our heat map object, and our callback is going to be, we're going to pass heat map dot so we'll pass a function which is going to do heat map of data, right, and it's going to set the data on that of user timestamps of I, right? Our callback function is going to take a variable I, and then it is also going to, let's break this down a little bit. It's going to call heat map.that, right? And right, then we're going to also want to go ahead and do heat map.plot. All right, so now on a hover is going to have this function, which will go ahead and pass the data to our heat map object and plot it. All right, so it looks like we passed I here, right? But maybe we should check that the right thing to pass was I. So I think we might have actually needed to access that object, right? So when we used our callback, right, if we actually pass a D of 0, that is actually going to be the user name, right? We're using data of I.0, right? So that's actually going to go ahead and access that. We can still call this I, but it is D of I of 0. And now let's go plot it. All right, so it looks like it worked. We added an SVG to the page, but it looks like it's plotting on the same SVG. So if we look at what's going on in our console here, here it is plotting the data. So these are the lists it got of messages. So as we scroll down, you can see that it actually got less messages. So if we go ahead and dive into the page here, we can see that we got one SVG here. Let's see what we got. Looks like they stack themselves. So here's div ID viz. Here's our 400 by 400. And I think we might have accidentally nested the SVGs. So let's see where we selected. Let's do this. Where I think in our other one we selected SVG. Yes, let's do this. So let's just select that and actually run it at the bottom. Now let's go ahead and look, and there we go. We got our plot. So you see that the third most active user is really using using Slack at night. If you look at our second most active user, it didn't look like it actually updated that. So we can go ahead and see what's going on. If we look at the data that got logged, let's get the console, and we can see that it looks like we got the same data element log there. 578 attributes. Let's see if we get the third one. 418. Do we get an update on the plot here there? So if we dive in a little bit, we can see that actually we use the enter method here, which is why we aren't getting new elements. So what we can do, a little bit of hack, is we can actually go ahead and just kind of move all of our plot commands inside of the plot here. So what we'll actually do is just generate a new SVG every time. What we can do is delete the old ones, right? So we'll go ahead and give these SVGs dot attribute. We'll give them an ID, and we'll delete the old ones with that ID. So let's give it an attribute of ID, and we'll give it the heat map. Right, and now what we can do is before we go ahead and plot it, we can destroy the old one. So we can select, just go ahead and select all, and be more generous. Let's select SVG that has, we can just take hash heat map. We could do SVG hashtag heat map, right? And this should go ahead and delete the old one. And so we'll see the new one plotted. Because of the enter method, right, all those rectangles are already there, so we didn't have anything to update. So now we can go ahead and hover here, and let's see, we got a user, and we've got a new user. We can see that there are different activity patterns for different users here. Yeah, this is how we can go ahead and dive into each user. We can connect these plots in D3.